host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you different guests who have encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and allow them to come on and share some of their story in hopes that it encourages you to share some of yours. I'm thrilled this week to have my special guest, Patrick Harris, on with me today. Patrick, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Harris. I am a fifth-year teacher currently out of Detroit, Michigan. I teach middle school. Yes, I said middle school. Sixth and seventh grade English. I have taught in a plethora of places, public, charter, private, overseas, started in DC. So I'm glad to be back home in Detroit, Michigan, where I grew up, to be able to teach youth and really prepare them to be, advocates of their own lives and advocates for justice. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, so talk to me a little about your path into education. Where did you always want to be a teacher?
Always, yes. So I have always wanted to be a teacher since I was 3 years old, even so much that I begged the preschool teacher that taught my cousins to let me come to school a year early. I know that was illegal, but back then the rules were a little, the oversight wasn't, that much. So I used to go to PM preschool for an entire year before I was actually even eligible. So I've always had adults who were in my life who really poured into me, who really supported me, who really nurtured my belonging, you could say, in the teaching profession. And so that just kind of manifested itself over the years, all the way up until I majored in education at Michigan State University.
That's awesome. So when you were moving into education and knowing that was something you wanted to do, was middle school on your radar, or were you just kind of open to whatever?
Hell no. It really so I thought for a long time, I knew that I belonged in the early years because I knew that Black male educators were rare to come by in K through 12 generally, but they're especially rare in early childhood classrooms. And so I thought I would teach first, second grade. I thought the highest I would possibly go was third. So I came out the gate teaching first. And then I got a little taste of fifth. And then I was like, okay, I think this is a sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just kind of testing the waters with sixth and seventh. But this is new for me this year.
So, being in education for a few years now, what is something that you think you've really learned about yourself while being a teacher?
Mm, something I've learned about myself. I've learned so much. Um, about myself as a teacher or personally.
Either way.
Either way. What's most pressing on my heart? I think so education is a long-term game. If you're trying to make an impact in this business, in this work, you have to be in it for the long haul. We are not a type of profession that gets things done instantly. That's just not, it doesn't work like that. And so I've had to learn, being a millennial, where instant gratification is just something that we live by, right? Like 10 likes, 12 likes, 100 likes, 1,000 likes, 10,000 followers, right? Like we appreciate that. But in education, that child may not read until March. You know what I'm saying? You may not find a rhythm until February, April, right? You may not see that child grow until they're out of your class.
Right.
They're further down the line. And so I've really had to learn that the change that I want to see, the change that I want to see is not going to come instantly, but it comes with consistency. It comes with reflection, and it comes with strategy, and that is some some really key lessons. The real key lesson that I've learned is being really strategic with how you, I guess you could say, operate, like in your job.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I would say that it also takes it takes a commitment to um, whatever bureaucracy that you choose to be a part of. To be in education also takes being a part of some sort of institution, some sort of
Right.
a belief in an institution, that an institution can actually provide an education that is just, that is equitable to the students that we serve. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so, in addition to being like committed to the long term game, you are committed to and have a belief in the bureaucracy that you currently work with at the moment,
Right.
whether that is a public school district, whether that is your private school, your standalone charter, your charter management organization. Um, we can't do this work alone.
Right.
I've tried to be the lone soldier, and it hasn't worked. It truly hasn't. And so, when I've collaborated with folks from with folks in the business, when I've learned to prioritize what can happen right now versus what can happen in June versus what can happen 2 years down the line, I've been able to see better gains and reach goals that I think are truly important for kids' success.
Well, one thing I want to ask too is something that you brought up a minute ago when you were introducing yourself, and that is just the reality that there are a lack of black male educators, especially in early elementary education. And with the recent research out there of the importance of having black male educators for all ages and the impact that can have, um, what do you think? What is the value that you've seen in that yourself of being one of those educators who is working with kids every day? How have you seen that impact happen? Are you there? Did I lose you?
Nope, I'm still here. Um, I think for me, being a unicorn in education just gives you a different starting point, a different way of connecting with your students. I would say that I'm able to, you know, being a black male educator starting point isn't all in. But it does give me a unique perspective as it relates to how I relate to my students, how I choose content to teach, how is, being a black male educator who teaches black male students, I automatically have high expectations
Mm.
of them. I know that I want them to not only beast whatever is required of them by white supremacists and unfortunately, but by these districts and bureaucracies. But I also want them to have a true understanding of who they are and how they are seen and how they want to be seen and operate in the world.
Right.
I think being or coming from a marginalized group, you just kind of have that inkling that, hey, I'm in this field, I'm in education, I'm in middle school English education specifically because I want to be able to facilitate these conversations for students.
Mhm.
And so really it just gives me a different vantage point. It gives me a different set of eyes that white educators would not necessarily have. Um, and I'm grateful for it.
I love that. Well, I want to kind of talk to a little bit about something else you mentioned was you got to go overseas for a little while. Tell me about that and how that came to be.
Yeah, well, it was very interesting, very random, and very sudden. I was teaching at a very small private school in DC, and I also have a podcast, Common Sense Podcast, which is a part of Good Media. And on the podcast, one episode, long story short, I was advocating or arguing a particular point that my school leader, who I didn't know was a listener, disagreed with. And so she ended up firing me in the middle of the school year, which is like, at this point, no biggie. And so, but it was very devastating and very crushing at the
Right.
moment. And so I said, what am I going to do next? Like I have to find a job. And I'm one of those people that I don't like to just jump in any school. Like I need to feel like called to be in a specific space. I need to feel connected to the opportunity, to the school, to the network. And I like a challenge, to say. And so I was just doing some research. I was interviewing at a ton of different schools and, teaching internationally kind of piqued my interest. And it just so happened that one of the leaders at an international school was from Detroit, Michigan. And having a conversation with her just kind of called me to kind of accepting the challenge of being a mid-year teacher at at a school in Doha, Qatar, which is in the Middle East, not
Wow.
too far from Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Oman, right across the way from Sri Lanka, India, right? And so I really had a unique opportunity to teach year 6, which is a British curriculum, technically 5th grade, and I taught all subjects there.
That's incredible. And would you ever recommend that or do it again? Would you ever recommend that or do it again? Did I lose you? Are you there? I think it's my Wi-Fi that may be really
Well,
bad.
I think it's mine. You hear me okay though?
Yes.
Okay. Would I recommend it? I think it's totally up to the person, right? Like I, experienced a lot overseas being a Black male educator that I did not, or maybe would not teaching in the United States.
Like what?
I faced a lot of this outward ignorance and racism that was very unfamiliar to me.
Right.
Particularly being called the N-word a lot, being made fun of for my skin color, right? Like, it took a lot of adjusting, I could say. But anytime you move to a new country, especially as suddenly as I did, you have to give yourself time to transition.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give yourself time to find a supportive community. You have to give yourself time to figure out why the hell are you there and what is your purpose. And so I think that the more that the more that I reflected, the longer I was there, the longer I interacted with my community, the more I really just felt like I was starting to make some strides, right? And there were some things I had to adjust with myself and my own teaching practice. I taught, 100% ELL learners, right? Students who only spoke Arabic. And so now here I am, American speaking English teacher who speaks, literally at the speed of light. To some of them, like I was struggling in a sense.
Right.
On top of just like experiencing loneliness, sometimes missing home, not really feeling like I fit in. So like there were just a lot of things happening, but I was certainly recommended for those who want to experience education on the other side of the world, trust me, like there are so many similarities to the American education system, and that's when I realized that education is a struggle everywhere. Like we are really struggling to truly define what makes a good teacher. We're start really learning good education look like. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What a productive and loving classroom, how to like look like and sound like. How does that truly operate? And so much of education is so subjective, which I think is okay. I think it's okay. But in the world of standardization, it makes it difficult. It truly does. But ultimately, if folks are interested in international teaching, there are tons of opportunities in a variety of parts of the world. And I'm sure many of your listeners are American. And I think, being an American gives you a worldly advantage to compete for these positions.
Right. I love that. Well, Patrick, one question that I always love to end these conversations on is, if there was one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
Understood about me or understood about teaching?
Just in general, about anything. Your one thing.
Think that I wish that people truly understood the power of reflection is where the real learning happens. To plan great lessons. Great lessons don't lead to powerful reflection. Reflection lead to powerful lessons. Reflection allows us to check our own biases and to show up as the teachers that our students truly deserve. It allows us to show up for our family and our partners. True reflection helps us to move the needle forward in our lives. And I think that our jobs and our schools need to allow time and space for reflection. We need to continue to prioritize reflection for ourselves and our students. And I think that the more that we reflect, the better people and the better educators we'll become.
I love that. Well, Patrick, I have loved getting to chat with you tonight, and I just want to tell you thank you so much for making some time to come on my show tonight.
Thank you. And thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you were awesome. So if anybody wants to check out Patrick Harris, make sure you follow him online. He shares great stuff all the time. But thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.